Hi, I'm Sara from SewingMastery.com.
And I'm Liz from Sew A Lot.
And we are in the middle of filming our newest online course, the PFAFF Bootcamp, which will help people who have the Wi-Fi capable machines get the most out of all those wonderful features. But in this video, we're going to take a list of all of our most common questions that people ask us. This is like
about their machine.
Yes, about their machines,
yes.
Sewing and embroidery.
Right. So
but this video will help, all these tips are going to help you no matter what PFAFF machine you have, or if you found us and you're watching this and you just have a sewing experience and you run into
us be silly.
and all of our favorite things. So we have a huge list of things that are always asked. I mean, you get a lot of questions at your store.
So we both have stores, so we do get asked questions regularly.
And a lot of them are very similar. And on our Sewing Mastery website where we do videos on machines,
get questions there too.
I get a lot of emails or people reach out to me via the Facebook or somehow. Because we have a lot of online courses, by the way, we have our Stitching Cosmos online course. That'll teach you a lot about your decorative stitches and accessory feet. We have embroidery classes. If you happen to have a Husqvarna Viking, we have boot camp for that. And
Bernina, you've got the Stitching Cosmos.
We got it all. So definitely check out the links below that will help you find additional information. All right. So starting at
Here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. This is my favorite video that we make.
It is fun. Yeah, it is fun. Where do we want to start?
Because a lot of these things that we think are common knowledge.
Because we've been doing this for so long.
Because we've been doing it for so long, but the same questions keep getting asked. So we feel like this is a great video to sort of say, here you go. These are the answers to all of your burning sewing machine questions. It is possible with the PFAFF machines. The PFAFF machines have a variety of presser feet. They have IDT presser feet, and they have non-IDT presser feet. IDT is that integrated dual feed, that built-in walking foot that slides down and comes back up. There are presser feet, I don't know that you'll be able to see this, but there are presser feet that have no opening in the back for the IDT, and then there are presser feet that have an opening in the back for IDT. So if it's open in the back, you engage your IDT. If there's no slit in the back of the foot though, you don't engage the IDT. With the 2A fancy stitch foot, it's called the fancy stitch foot, I have had people come in with their machines, and there's nothing worse than dragging your machine into the store, and then you drag it in and we look at it and go, oh, here you go, this is your issue. So if you take the fancy stitch foot, it is possible to engage your IDT and use it. But what will happen is the poor little foot is trying to feed, and the IDT is trying to feed, but it's running onto the metal of the foot, and it can't do anything, and it doesn't feed right. You said you did this like one of the first times.
Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah.
So I was actually at the PFAFF new dealer training. And I've been around for a long time, but I had forgotten about that. And we switched feet, and I left my IDT engaged, and my decorative stitches
did not look
were
pretty.
Coming out very short and squatty. And of course, from the back, the teacher was like, oh, you have your IDT on.
Engaged.
And guess what? Now, as a teacher myself, standing on the backside of a student, I can always see when they have the wrong one. Well, speaking of wrong feet.
I was going to say, and the flip side of that is, a lot of times when you have a foot that will take your IDT, I spend a lot of time walking around class going, engage your IDT, engage your IDT. You've got it, use it. If you've got a foot with an opening in the back, engage that IDT.
And I was taught, and I do see it too, is if you don't engage it and you've got that big open gap in the back, your fabric's like fishy fish tailing. Yeah, it's awful. So if your machine is stitching not as precise as it should be, you might double check that. I get that on some of the other brands that are not used to having that and they're new to that world. And I'm like, you got to put that on there. Yes, so that is true. And then also putting the feet on backwards.
This is the worst culprit. This is the one that always gets put on backwards.
That one's the zipper
Well, first of all, people don't even know what this little weird looking foot is. They're like, what? I didn't get a zipper foot with my machine. Yes, you did. It just looks weird.
And it has a number on it. It's a number 4. And if you cannot see that you're number 4.
So on all the feet that came with your machine, they all are numbered.
Correct.
The ones that you buy separate don't have numbers on them. But if they came with your machine, they have a number on them. If you snap that foot on and that number is upside down, that foot is on backwards.
Or you can't see it.
Right.
Because it's on the back side.
So what happens with the zipper foot is everybody thinks that this is the front of the foot and this is the back of the foot. When in reality, this is the back, and this is giving you 2 different spots to use your IDT. So you can flip it to the one side of the needle or pop it onto the other side of the needle. Now,
the new machine.
The new Icon 2, if we put it on upside down, which I can't get them on upside down.
But from the back of the machine, that's going to be a little tricky.
I'm better at it from the back.
Sure.
If we put it on backwards with the new machine, there's a little box up here in the top left-hand corner, and that little box is going to tell you, first of all, which foot you're supposed to be, or what it recommends. And if you put your foot on backwards in big red letters, it's going to say, your foot is on backwards.
Which is awesome because people put their foot on backwards.
Now, as of right now, you have to actually read that message for it to be impactful. They are working on an update down the road that I heard a secret, that they're working on an update down the road where there will eventually be pop-ups.
Like it won't let me sew with the foot on backwards?
Your foot's on backwards. So that's something that's coming with Icon 2.
That is pretty amazing, the technology that they've added into this part of it. How about stitch plates? Do we want to talk about stitch plates next?
Yes.
All right, so
why do you need 2 different stitch plates?
Well, what are they? So one's a straight stitch throat plate, and one is a zigzag throat plate. And I do love on the newer machines, so if you have older PFAFF machines, this might not be the case, but your machine will sense which one it's on.
Right.
So a straight stitch throat plate,
so
explain what you want.
A straight stitch throat plate has a single hole for your needle to go down, and a regular zigzag plate has a wide oval shape hole. What happens is sometimes if we're doing straight stitching, and have you ever had your fabric smushed down into your needle plate? Especially with these bigger machines that now can do wider stitches, that hole is wider.
Right.
So there's more space for and if you're sewing with a dull needle and you start at the end of a piece of fabric, inevitably it's going to push right down into that needle plate. Changing your needle and using a single hole needle plate will help keep that fabric from dipping down into your needle plate, which is why you need 2 needle plates.
And I use it a lot for free motion quilting.
Yes.
It actually makes my
better performance.
Yep, good quality stitch.
Yep.
And also, somebody described it once to me, is it feels like when they're free motion quilting with a straight stitch needle plate on, it feels like their quilt is like floating on an air hockey table. Because it isn't kind of dipping, dragging. Yeah. And so they were describing a little bit more fluid movement, and that was something that I always recommend.
And so we used to get straight stitch needle plates with some of the older machines, the Pros, the Pro 2s, but there was never anywhere good to put the silly thing. So then people would come to class and they wouldn't have it, or they'd come to class with a straight stitch plate on and they didn't have their zigzag one, and it was a whole big thing. Well, when we came out with Icon, they put a slot in the bottom of the accessory tray for you to store your second needle plate in.
Yes. And you have to go in from this side, and then it will snap right in.
So now it's stuck there. It's like flip it over and it won't come out, and it's stored.
And always with you.
Right, which is a big thing.
Helps out your local stores, teacher, when we have to go find a
service techs. You know, the service techs go to service the machines.
They have to check.
They have to check that width. Yeah.
So keep them happy with that part of it.
This is one of my favorite accessories.
Yes, it looks like a spool cap, but it's not.
A spool stand.
Yes.
So in Icon 2 and Performance Icon, we have the telescope. And the spool pins flip up, and I can't find the other one. There it is. So the spool pins flip up, and what happens is we put our spool on here. If you can stand your spool of thread up and have the thread come off the top into a telescope, you're going to have better stitch results because you're putting less tension on your thread. If we lay it down, sometimes it'll get wrapped, things will happen. If we put it up and we pull it, it's basically like pulling a rope of something heavy. You're just adding a bunch of extra tension to your thread that you don't want. So standing up is the best way. Well, what happens is this spool peg is sort of right on this edge. And if you put your spool of thread here, sometimes what will happen is the thread will fall down, wrap around the bottom of the spool, get caught, break, and then you got all kinds of issues. So this silly little platform,
that's a good name for it.
It's a little, that's what it is, a little platform. You put that little guy there, then you've got a nice place for your thread to sit. Then the other thing about this thing that's fancy is a lot of the threads now have the pop-offs on the bottom, and people will pop them off on the bottom to undo their thread, and then they forget to pop them back up. Well, what happens is it drops down and gets caught around the pop-up lip. Same thing. The tension messes up, the thread breaks, whatever. Well, there's a lip here so that if you're in your pop-up, it won't get down there and get caught. So I had a customer 4 hours away from me.
Oh, no.
That was having tension issues. We talked on the phone about every possible thing that it could be. Change your needles, what stitch is it, try a different stitch, try a different thread, check your I mean, we went through everything to the point where I was like, I FaceTimed her and everything, and she was to the point where she was going to box her machine up and ship it to me to service, and I hung up the phone with her, and all of a sudden I went, wait a minute. And I called her back and I said, do you have your little stand for your thread? And she said, no, I've never used that before. So it's not a thing that you may run into all the time. She put that little thing on there and that tension problem went away.
Interesting. Yeah. So there's a reason they give us these things. So if you're ever wondering what it's for, there was probably a reason that they included it.
Yes.
So you're probably supposed to use it.
Right.
So speaking of just questions that we get asked, one of the things that I know not everybody thinks of, but I know you and I use it all the time. If you have a question and you want to just type it into, if you can think it, type it into Google. We call it the Google around here. The Google will answer your question a lot of times. So, and how many of you have like started typing in a question, and then it reads your mind and says, "Is this the question you wanted to ask?" And you're like, "Oh, I wonder how it knew that."
Because somebody else asked.
Probably 100 other people have asked the same question. So, if it's late at night, we're not up, or your store isn't accessible because it's a weekend,
right?
You can type in your question, and often you will find a blog post. One of our videos usually pops up with a lot of our machines, and you could have that question answered. Because I know the last time there was another brand of question, like we don't sell one of the brands lately, and they asked me, it was a Janome.
Okay.
I'm a little rusty on my Janome answers, and so I just copied the email that they had sent with their question, and then it answered it with a beautiful description and correction.
Nice.
And I copied that and then put it in her email and then emailed it back to her. So, you know, she had to wait and she could have done the same thing, but just know you can do the same thing too. Yeah. So ask the Google and see what comes up. And if you don't know what you're asking for, well, then you can ask us too. Yeah. We love to hear what we are running into. I'm going to just throw in another one. This is one we hadn't talked about, but I had, because it just happened at a recent embroidery workshop. A couple days, heavy embroidery stitching. They had, we are going to talk about the stabilizer. So they had ironed-on fusible stabilizer. We had heavy tearaway underneath it, but she was going, why is my fabric waving and everybody else's was not? And we tried everything, the new needles. Right. Her machine sounded beautiful, like it was like a brand new machine. And I actually complimented her on how good her machine sounded, so I knew it wasn't an issue. She actually was embroidering with sewing thread in her bobbin, so it was thicker, and it was actually giving it so much extra thickness that it was actually waving the flatness. We changed.
Sometimes it takes a minute to solve that mystery,
that one caught me up the other day. Yeah. And we put in embroidery weight bobbin thread, which was thinner, and so it wasn't making such a thickness on the back, and the rest of it was smooth on it. So let's talk about one of our stabilizers. You can use this whether you're a sewer or an embroiderer, but this is the fusible woven interfacing. We decided that we both use it quite a bit. So we iron this on the back of cotton fabric quite a bit. Just to give the cotton fabric some body. And then
this still has another piece of other, so it's not just a.
It's not just interface. It's not stabilizer, but it stabilizes the weave of your fabric. Right. If you've ever done garment sewing, we talk about interfacing. This is like interfacing for embroiders. Right. And I'm always a fan of 2 layers of stabilizer. Yes. So we will give you the pass of counting this as one of those 2 layers.
I'll sometimes use fusible fleece when I embroider quilt blocks, and I use it as my first layer and tearaway as my second.
Yes, so kind of keep in mind 2 layers, but this is...
You can never have too much.
We will talk more about that. Yes. You do need to really make sure that this irons on, like a steam iron.
Presses work really nice with fusible interfacing.
You do like the Singer press.
Well, because I'm too impatient. I'm an impatient presser.
You go,
right, and it like, holds really well in one spot because I got distracted and started talking to someone, or like, so if you do the press, you shut it and then you can walk away and it beeps.
Right, and then you lift it up.
Yeah.
I have noticed that some of our embroidery stabilizer providers, I'm not going to say which one, doesn't have as much glue on the back as others do.
brands.
So if it's not fusing, even when you are doing it right, do keep that in mind and see if that is actually, maybe you can try a different brand.
Yeah. Threading your machine. There's a couple of different things about threading your machine that you should be aware of.
And this will go on any machine.
Yeah,
this is a good tip for any machine
anybody.
owner.
So let's see how talented I am if I can thread backwards. I'm usually pretty good at it. When we thread any sewing machine, you really want to hold with 2 hands. You don't want to give it one of these.
The loosey-goosey.
Right, because then sometimes you don't get flossed into your tension disc. So it doesn't matter what sewing machine you're in, you need to use both hands. You're not holding with a death grip with this hand, you're just feeding the thread through, giving it a little tension, like you're flossing your teeth. So when you see how I just sort of hold it and keep pulling it through? When you get here especially, you want to make sure that you really floss down,
right down
through the tension unit. I'm too...
Okay. There you go.
There we go.
Good.
And then once you get through the take-up lever, you can let go with this hand and continue threading down into your needle. But I see a lot of people come to the store and one hand thread it. You should never one hand thread 2 hands.
I didn't realize it, but I do thread with my left hand now. You just,
you hold with the one and thread with the other.
Yep.
But a lot of times people will come in and they'll say, I'm having a problem with my machine, my tension's not working, and then we'll say, okay, let's thread it up, and they use one hand. You cannot, sometimes it doesn't get seated in there very well. The other thing is you want to make sure that that presser foot is always in the up position when you're threading.
Right.
Because, as my mother always says, when the presser foot is up, the doors are open, saying, welcome, thread, come into the machine.
I will never
If the
forget.
foot is down, the doors are closed, saying, go away, thread, you can't come in here.
Yes, that is a good one. And you kind of talk about floss or flossing.
Yeah.
You can always kind of go back and
Right,
forth. That's
right.
another little tip if you're unsure. But the holding should do it.
And when I tell people, though, to hold it, sometimes they hold it.
Oh, and then they're,
and
then
I'm
it
like,
yanks. I had one gal
need to
break it.
You just need to let it feed through your hand, not death grip it.
That reminded me, she was holding so tight and she would break it every, I'm like, you're going too tight.
You're just sort of feeding it.
Yes, I love the door open.
Right.
Welcome.
Then bobbins, when you're winding, well, first of all, on a lot of PFAFF and Husqvarna Viking machines, they have a thing in them where you can't put your bobbin on upside down.
Right.
You can't put it in your bobbin case, or you can't put it on your bobbin winder upside down. That being said, if you buy a pre-wound bobbin, you can put it in your bobbin case upside down.
So you need to know which way
You
you're
need to know
supposed
which
to
way
be.
it's supposed to be in there, because we're training you to just know, because it does it. So when you put your bobbin in your bobbin case, you want it to spin counterclockwise. Drop-ins are counterclockwise. Front loads are clockwise. When you put your bobbin on your spool peg and flip the little arm, the little window will pop up for you to wind your bobbin. You want to make sure you wind that bobbin at a half speed starting out.
We are kind of noticing that's a thing.
Well, and what happens is, if you go full speed on some of those poly threads are so strong that what will happen is they will start to torque your bobbin. Because the bobbins are plastic. So eventually what will happen is the center post will start to twist a little, ever so much. Sometimes you won't be able to see it. You'll put it in your machine, but now it's kinked out of whack and it starts not feeding right. So if you ever start having bobbin tension problems, you might try another bobbin first to see if maybe these are not eternal. You're not going to keep these forever. Sometimes at some point the plastic will wear out on them.
Yes.
But if you want it at a half speed, you're going to extend their life.
I have noticed that too with our customers.
Yeah.
So one of the things we have to always explain, some of you are probably perfect doing this, but we always need to talk about it, is having your machine serviced on a regular basis.
It's important.
So you need to be taking care of the bobbin area, and no canned air,
No. So at home, you need to clean out that bottom area.
It gets linty, especially if you're using cotton fabrics, minkies, flannels, fleeces, and all the battings. I know batting
is pretty
free motion
linty.
quilting is very linty. So make sure you're getting in there and brushing it out. I don't care what you use, just use something.
Right.
But not canned air. Don't blow it in. But annually, what do you tell your customers?
If you're sewing on your machine daily, you probably need to bring it in every 6 months.
We do have some people that are on a 6-month plan.
We have some on 6 months I've got customers that have machines from the 80s that they still bring in every 6 months just to get it cleaned out because it's going to perform better when it's cleaned out.
Now that's extreme.
Right, that's extreme. For most anybody else, you want to do every year. And that's even if you're not, those of you that aren't using your machine regularly, you need to bring yours in every year too, because what happens is things start to dry up, they get seized up, and then when you do go to sew, you might have a problem.
I get a little.
Right.
Yes.
Like once a year is a good.
Yep. So a good example, we realized like during COVID, those that kept their annual service could kind of go like skate a little longer when they couldn't get their machines in for service because everybody else decided to sew, and all the service departments were totally full. They could go a little longer. It was like they got a little, they got a pass.
Yeah.
And then we got them in when we could. But if it had been 2-3 years, those machines weren't happy until they had a TLC. Now, speaking of TLCs, one thing that you can do with the Wi-Fi capability machines is do the updates when they come out.
Right. It'll actually pop up on your screen, as long as you're signed into your Wi-Fi, it'll pop up on your screen and tell you that you have an update available. This is important. You have 3 options. You can say, yes, I want to update it. No.
Remind me later.
Remind me later. Or the other one is, no, I don't want to update it at all.
I don't know. Yeah.
Which I would update it.
Definitely.
Because usually if there's an update, that means they're fixing something software.
Or giving us something new.
But the thing you need to know is if you click yes, the first thing it's going to do is download the update to your machine. Now, depending on your Wi-Fi service, this could be quick, or depending on the update, this could be quick or it could take a minute.
Right.
You can still use your machine while it's downloading the update to your machine. But what will happen is once it downloads to your machine, it will start to update. And what that involves is sometimes your machine will go black screen. Don't turn it off if your machine screen goes black, because that means it's in the process. There's usually a little bar that will faintly show up at the bottom, a progress bar.
Yep.
So, or 2 little cogwheels in the middle of the screen.
Yeah.
But you want to just leave it on, let it do what it's going to do. The lights might flash. It might look like it's having a dance party. It's just getting new stuff. And when it's done, it'll turn itself off and turn itself back on, and you'll be all good to go.
But if you do turn it off in the middle, you might be sitting in front of a dead machine.
Right.
But it's okay. If you're comfortable, you can go to PFAFF's website, download the update onto a USB stick,
and update it that way.
and it'll tell you what button to hold while you stick that in, and then you turn it on, and you can do it yourself. If you don't want to, your local store could do it for you. And
but then you got to take it in.
If you're close, you can, or not comfortable with it, you're not far away from getting your machine updated, but you might be at a standstill until you get that done. But take that tip, don't turn it off, and you're good to go.
Another thing to be known about that is if you're not signed into your MySewNet cloud and you save things to your machine, it'll still save things to your machine.
Right.
But if you do the update, those things will go away.
Yes. So moral of the story is
sign into your cloud.
Always be, and you can see that right on your screen. Yes. If the cloud is grayed out, then that's an indication you are not, and that you want to get signed back in. And then those updates come in, and everything's happy. So definitely do all those good things. So we have a ton of embroidery tips next, and in no particular order. These again are just common customer questions that you usually can't find in your manual. So it's not like there's a list of these, so hopefully you go back through this video and you'll be like, oh, now that makes sense why they said that. Right. So how about, let's just go from the top. One of the things we talk about, and we're going to do it in the lesson where we do the quilt binding in the hoop, is the fact that you can use your foot control during embroidery.
Yes.
So tell them why we would even want to not to use those start-stop button on the front of our machine.
So sometimes maybe we're doing it in the hoop project and we've got a zipper in there, or we're holding binding in there. We've got our hands in there. And if you've ever sewn your finger before, you'll be very happy about this.
No.
I haven't on a sewing machine. I have a long arm, but
ouch.
But so sometimes you need more control and you need to vary the speed. And if something bad happens, you want to be able to take your foot off you want it to stop. And what happens is that if you press that start-stop button and something bad happens, your panic mode sets in and you forget where the button is.
Or you're 3 stitches past the time you decided you needed to stop it.
And with the foot control, you just take your foot off and you're done.
Yes. So we do that with the binding. Did you know you can put binding on a project while you're embroidering?
Yeah.
We're going to show you.
Another thing about the foot control is if you do use the start-stop button, you can stomp on the foot control to stop it.
It's like an emergency stop. Yes.
Emergency, yeah.
I know a couple of people, they'll put their foot control on their table, and then it's closer. So if they are kind of close by, they could actually
And not all brands give you that ability. Like you can't use your foot control in embroidery on a lot of brands.
Oh, right. They have you take it off.
Yeah.
Like you have to take it off to embroider. Right. We talked about this, about stabilizer.
Oh, yeah.
You got to use stabilizer. If things aren't looking right, 2 layers minimum is what I always say.
Yes.
But there's times where you
And that's even
need
for
more.
sewing decorative stitches. Like if you're sewing, you need stabilizer.
Right.
Anything you're doing with a needle swing,
it's going to pull it in. Yeah, if it's rough, kind of coming out a little wavy, it's a stabilizer. Sometimes it's just, you might be using plenty of stabilizer, but not the right kind of stabilizer. So again, reach out if you don't know. Send us pictures. I know
there's
that's
all different types that go on the back, and then there's types that go on the top.
Yes, but if you send me a picture of what you're working on, it's a little easier for us to answer your questions, or even a little video.
Yes.
So keep that in mind. You have that right there in your hands. I know some of my emails come through and go, what stabilizer do I need? And I'm like, what are you working on? Help us out a little bit.
Right.
All right. How about the next one?
Oh, yeah.
So the next tip we have is...
Do I have a little hoop? Oh, where's the...
Oh, wait a minute.
Do you know that the smaller embroidery hoops stitch faster than the bigger embroidery hoops?
Yes.
So if I put a big design, or the same design in both of these hoops, it's going to get done faster in the little hoop than it is on the big hoop, even though it's the exact same design.
I did that once. I had a whole bunch of little ones, and I thought I was going to save time by putting them all in the hoop. And then I actually timed it because I was doing a bunch of them. And it was actually faster to do it in the small hoops and re-hoop each time. And so it is a true statement. The bigger the hoop, the slower your machine embroiders.
So, I mean, there are big designs sometimes, so we need a big hoop. But don't discredit the littler hoops. And you're going to save stabilizer. If you use the hoop that's best fit for your design that you're stitching, that's the road you want to take.
Exactly.
Speaking of hoops, this little clamp down here, we get a lot of people that break these little clamps.
I've broken them.
Liz,
tell me why I break my clamps.
Because you try, first of all, you try to tighten this screw all the way tight
and then
before you clamp. So if you tighten this screw and then you go to clamp and you're like, oh, it's not closing.
Push it harder.
Don't push it harder. Loosen the screw a little, then try again. Loosen the screw a little, then try again until it clamps. Then you can give it one more little half turn for, security reasons.
So I always tell our customers who come in for a replacement is to buy 2. You technically, if you have more than one hoop at home, you have a backup on the other hoops.
So basically, your hoops you don't need to replace if this mechanism breaks unless the outer hoop ring breaks or the inner hoop ring breaks. Breaks, not breaks. So that's the only, you can get this clamp, you can get a new screw, you can get a new spring, you can get a new nut. All these pieces you can get separately from your dealer.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about, speaking of hoop, and you have that up in the air already, is that you do need to watch when you put their 2 hoops together is the word, the brand name, and then the numbers, because there is a part at the top of your hoop that you actually are not embroidering in, kind of a
If you ever look and see that the center horizontal line looks a little lower than where the center should be, it's because it's accounting for that dead space.
So what happens is if you don't look at your numbers, you can get that inner hoop upside down.
And your horizontal line is not in the right place.
Everything is off. So just FYI on that part of it. Now you had this happen with a customer the other day.
Oh.
This is
a metal hoop. There are 4 different metal hoops. And
yes, our new one just came out.
We just got a new metal hoop,
and it is here. I'll hold that.
Perfect. It's heavy.
Oh, yes. Oh, and the reason it's heavy is because
it's metal.
And it has extra magnets in it.
And it has magnets. So they are done with magnets, and these magnets are really strong. The hoop is metal itself on the back, and then it has like a felt coating on the top. So the point is to put your stuff in and then stick your magnets around. You don't really want more than 6 to 8 magnets on a metal hoop. Because it'll get too heavy, and sometimes it'll get so magnetic it'll stick to your needle plate.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a thing. But I did have a customer once who pretty much bought all the magnets she could buy and then placed them right next to each other all the way around. Well, what that did was, first of all, that hoop was crazy heavy.
Yes.
And second of all, it just threw the embroidery arm all out of whack. So be aware that you definitely need extra magnets. You don't need a little, goes a long way.
So yes. So usually these come with 4 magnets, and we often say buy an extra pack of magnets.
Or buy an extra hoop.
Yes.
Now, when you store this, store your magnets on the back of your hoop, because if you leave it on the front over time, the felt, like this one up in the corner.
Like our employees did here?
Yes. The felt will compress, and then it won't have
not
that
as
felt.
smooth as that part of it. So that's a good tip. And that new hoop size is 200 by 200.
Which people have been asking for like
quilter's
crazy.
Metal hoop.
Yes.
So, and your updates, by the way, part of them is so that new hoop for the machines that can take it will be available on your list.
Speaking of the metal hoop knocking things out of whack sometimes, there's also, if you don't pay attention, it is possible that you could put your own, if you've got your machine like up against a wall, or maybe your chair is close to your table and you're using a big 360 by 200 hoop, you need to be aware that your space, your machine is just not here when you're embroidering. Your machine is...
It can come back and hit you.
Right, or hit you.
Have you ever had it?
I have hit it. Or like a chair, like I had a customer once, I was embroidering in the 360 by 350 hoop. I had already done one whole side of the design. I had rotated it. I was halfway through it. It was in the machine. The customer came in with a swivelly chair. She swiveled back and didn't know, and the hoop ran into the chair. And the next thing I went over to look, and my design was off about 1/2 inch. And I had to scrap the whole thing and start over.
And that's a long design to stitch out.
It was hours.
That big. Yeah, those are big designs.
So you need to be aware that, first of all, you don't want your hoop to run into anything. Second of all, if something should happen and your embroidery arm can get knocked out of calibration, you don't have to turn the whole thing off.
Yeah.
All you have to do, take your hoop off the unit, pull the unit off, slide the unit back on, the box will pop up to recalibrate the unit. You'll press the button, it'll recalibrate, you put your hoop back on, and you start stitching again.
That has saved me so much time once I figured that out. The other part of this is, when your embroidery is done, and then it asks
keeps yelling at you to take your hoop off.
You take your hoop off because this arm is going to move to its park position, which if you're going to put it in your case and go somewhere, go home from a class, that you do want that to kind of do that part. But at home, how many of you have had it where you keep pulling that hoop off and then you touch it and it redoes it? You have a little trick.
Just hit the X.
I always hit the OK button.
Yeah, don't hit the OK button.
So I didn't know there was an X.
Yeah, just don't hit OK.
And what it does is it leaves the embroidery arm over in position, and you still have to take your hoop off.
So then it's not beeping at you though. I'm not ready. I don't want to take my hoop off yet. I'm doing something else. I'm finishing up something else. And
you can actually leave the hoop on, and then get ready to go
That
forward.
being said, the same thing happens with the bobbin winder. When the bobbin winder message comes up and tells you you're running out of bobbin thread, and you're like, psh, I know I got more thread on there.
I got this.
I can make it. If you hit OK, it's going to keep yelling at you to change your bobbin. If you hit the X, or just don't hit anything, it will keep sewing. Now, that being said, you're going to have to watch it because it will run out of bobbin thread and it will not tell you.
Yeah, because now it's on you.
Right, now you're responsible now.
Good. In addition to just watching what's around your embroidery machine, we've had a couple customers who have told us that their pets have been the culprits with their embroidery hoops.
Hoop calibration issues.
Yes, so kitty cats who have come to get snuggled in nearby. The puppies
so
that
be aware of them.
Just know that they are not always welcome in your sewing room. We did have it once, speaking of hoops that hit, at our store one time we had 2 machines embroidering back to back, and it was fine all day long.
And then all of a sudden,
it was Steve on one end, my husband, and one of the employees on another, and all of a sudden at one point both hoops were extended their full bit, and they just barely touched. And they were both towards the end of their design too.
Which, if you can catch it when it does it.
Yeah, it was. None of them were sitting at their machine. They were wandering off like we do.
Yeah, because if it does hit sometime, now if it hits hard enough, it's going to stop.
It could.
And it's going to say something happened.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't hit
it keeps going
hard, it'll keep stitching.
And then you're like, what happened here?
Why is it just this much out of balance?
Oh, but if you do get that message on your screen, and those of you who have downloaded the free apps for the Wi-Fi compatible machines,
your Sew Monitor will tell you.
Yes. So if you have wandered off and something happens, you'll get a notification. So we're so excited about the apps.
Yes.
So if you do have machines with the Wi-Fi capabilities, definitely check out all the functions of the free apps. So there's the one that
one app, My SewNet app, and then there's 3 to 4 functions within the app.
So the one that everybody should be using is the monitor.
Everyone should use it.
So it'll tell you how long you got, when you're out of bobbin, all that fun stuff. The next one is the
design positioning. So you can take a picture of your hoop and actually see what you're getting ready to stitch on.
It'll show that picture right up on screen. That's awesome.
Photo stitch. Take a picture
do
of
like your own digitizing with your phone.
Yep.
Yes. So we've got some great lessons on these, and then there is that one more.
And if you have a SewNet software subscription, you'll have the QR code creator.
And that is kind of fun. Yeah. We went through a whole bunch of things. Why would you want to embroider a QR code? You'll have to check that out
a lot of fun stuff
in our PFAFF Bootcamp course.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about USB sticks. So you can still use USB sticks.
There's still 2 little plugs over here.
You don't have to always use the
Wi-Fi
cloud system, which, by the way, is 10 times faster than a USB stick. So we are always encouraging you to do it. But on occasion, they are doing an update, or if you're at home and your Wi-Fi is not as consistent, or you have no Wi-Fi,
you can still save to a stick.
Yes. So, but sticks are meant for transferring designs from the computer
They're not a
to the
storage
machine.
solution.
And I heard something good the other day about USB sticks. They are going to die. This teacher just came and told us, your USB stick is going to die. And I went, well, that's kind of odd. But she was right. It's either going to die tomorrow, or it will die after you die.
Yeah, okay. I have an employee who saved every embroidery design he had on a USB stick, like ones that other people would give him. Like they weren't. It wasn't like he could go back and re-up. So everything was on the stick.
And then he lost.
And he went to plug it in one day, and it wouldn't open.
No stick.
No stick.
Everything gone.
Lost everything.
So the cloud system, that is free for actually, it is actually free for anybody. It is a free place where you could store your embroidery designs.
Right, so even if you did run off of a USB stick, you could still just store them in the cloud so you knew where they were.
Exactly. So some of us, I know I use Dropbox a lot because I do that because of other things, but there is something about having another place to store things. And I just use
100 megabytes.
Oh my gosh,
so that's a lot of.
That's a lot of design.
Ours are really full.
Yeah, we
and
were noticing.
We're only to 50% of the foliage.
Well, and that was something else we should probably tell them, that as you do fill up your cloud,
it might take it a minute.
It might take a minute to load into the new machine. You came here, you logged into your cloud, and you're like, why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? I'm like,
there's so much stuff in it.
Well, we just had to wait a little longer, and we weren't ready to wait. But we were realizing the speed that it takes to download all the your stuff onto my machine.
Yes.
And then when she's done here, we're going to log her out.
I already did.
You did. That's good.
So that I don't get messages.
Well, and when we started this course, we found our last PFAFF educator still logged into one of these. And
that poor woman is probably roaming around going, I wonder where I'm logged in at.
Yeah, because her app might have
We had the Swedish people come.
Were they?
And they were logged into one of our machines. And Sweden is a much different time zone than we are. Yes. Oh. And it kept sending messages to her in the middle of the night. Your thread's done. It's time to change your thread. And she said it took me about a week to figure out where I had logged into a machine.
Oh, because she couldn't just find it.
No.
What machine is logged in at 2 a.m. in the morning? You had a story last time you were here about a customer who was logged into her machine, and the service tech was doing the run time. She was running through the cycles.
She kept getting messages that she called her daughter. I'm friends with her daughter. She called her daughter and she said, they must be working on my sewing machine. It keeps telling me to change thread.
Oh, she got all excited because her machine was on the bench. Yeah. She knew she was going to get a phone call pretty soon that it was done.
That's a good indicator that your machine's being serviced.
Yeah, leave it logged in. No, that is good. But there is so many, and these are a lot of these are free with the purchase of your machine. So if you are seeing some fun topics or things that we talked about that were included in this particular machine, and you would like more information, definitely head over to your PFAFF retailer and have them show you some of these neat functions.
There's a lot of really great things that these machines can do.
Good. I think we actually covered.
We did it.
Oh my gosh. And I know there's a lot more. There is one more. The one that you're like, one more.
Where?
No, it's not. Well, it is written, but it's not written. It's where the @ sign is. People have to log into your account with your email address. And so the @ sign is down there in another screen of the menu, which we will show you.
Yes.
And we'll let you see that the @ sign is there. You just have to push one more button on the keyboard to find all the symbols.
Yes.
So yeah, I know that one's a question we get asked.
People do get asked
a lot on it.
We get a lot of questions when people are signing into their MySona accounts as to where the @ symbol is located. So if we click on here, the cloud, to sign into our account, and we go to our username is always going to be our email address. When we click on username, a keypad is going to come up at the bottom. The thing to notice is they are all capital letters when you first sign into it. You are not going to be able to find your @ sign unless your letters are in lowercase. So the first thing we're going to do is switch it to lowercase, start typing in our email address, then click on this little symbol down here next to the 1, 2, 3. Once we click on that, right down here in the bottom row, you're going to see your @ symbol. Then go back to the letters and continue typing in your email address. If you have the capitals on and you click on the extra tools, your @ sign is not going to be in here like it was a second ago. So the big important thing is always make sure you're in lowercase letters when you're looking for your @ sign.
All right. If you have more questions or have anything that could be that we can answer for you, we have a Facebook group.
Yes.
You can reach out to our store accounts via Facebook. We answer a lot of those just in between the daily stuff that we do. We love to hear from you. And we just want you to use your machine to the fullest. So I hope these have been helpful for you. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're welcome to leave comments below and ask your questions there. And we would love to hear from you. All right. Hope these have been helpful for you. And until next time, have fun sewing.